So let's review how to add and subtract fractions mathematically. There are 5 steps when looking at how to add or subtract fractions mathematically. The first thing is, if you're given a fraction that is in mixed numbers, you might want to convert it to improper. However, you could keep it as mixed. So we'll be looking at mixed and improper fractions later. The first thing to look for is the common denominator. Without that, it'll be very difficult to add or subtract fractions. The reason why you need a common denominator is you need to know the size of the piece. For example, the size of the 12th is much smaller than the size of an eighth, or the size of a quarter is smaller than the size of a half. That's why in order for you to add or subtract them, they need to have the same denominator. Secondly, you need to make both fractions have the same denominator by using equivalent fractions to make them have the same denominator. To make the sentence or the equation possible to solve. The third step is by rewriting and then actually adding or subtracting the numerators. The reason why we add or subtract the numerator is because the numerator tells me how many pieces I have. This does not tell me the size, but how many. This is why I'm allowed to add or subtract those pieces. The last thing you need to do is reduce to lowest terms. Reduce the fraction to lowest terms. So the first example we'll be looking at is adding 2/5 and 4/9 together. First step is to find a common denominator. In order to find a common denominator, you need to look for common multiples. You can either do this very quickly by multiplying the two numbers together and then maybe reducing if possible, or by just listing the multiples out. So in this case, multiplying 5 and 9 together give me a common denominator of 45. However, this is not always the lowest common multiple, so I can always list them out instead. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50 are all multiples of 5. Whereas for 9, I have 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, and I notice right away that I have a multiple that is common between the two, and that's 45. Number 2, using equivalent fractions make the equation possible. So I need to change 2/5 into something over 45. Well, how I get to that is I had to cut my pieces. Each piece has to be cut into smaller pieces, and I actually multiplied by 9. I have 9 times more pieces than I had before. That means the two that I had, the two of the larger fifths pieces, I have 9 times more of that also. So 2/5 is the same thing as 18 over 45. 4/9 is how much over 45? And I need to multiply the pieces by 5. I have to cut each one into 5 pieces, which means I'll have 5 more pieces on the top. 4 times 5 is 20. So now if I add these together, I have 18 over 45 plus 20 over 45. These are equivalent fractions to 2/5 and 4/9. Because they are now the same size, I can now add them properly, and 18 plus 20 is 38 over the size of the piece is still 45 pieces in the total bar. This I can now reduce if there's a common factor. And the common factor between 38 and 45 is only 1. So this is my fraction in lowest terms. So the answer 2/5 plus 4/9 is 38 over 45.